o'clock. Jay, what time do you have? 2.
Yep.
Okay. So do you anticipate anyone else that we need to wait on?
I mean, the only person I haven't heard back from is the mayor, but
He's not coming.
he notified you?
Okay, well, in which case we'll come to order. Our first order of business will be to stand and say pledge allegiance to the flag. All remove your hats if you have one on. Please stand and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the town of Spring Hill Board of Commissioners called a special meeting tonight to hear a presentation from Alliance Code Enforcement related to possibly them helping our manager in our town with code enforcement. And I think we have a gentleman here with Alliance. So if you'd like, we'd like to see your presentation. We might have some questions for you. So I would say, if we'd like no other business, we could go ahead and start with the presentation. Jay, unless you have.
Well, I guess you want to announce that it's for the quorum purposes, just for.
Yeah, we don't have enough here for a quorum, unfortunately, so we won't be able to vote on your proposal tonight, but all of us here would be interested to hear what you have to say. We may have some questions, so we could do a kind of question-answer session, but you'd have to understand there'll be no voting tonight because we don't have a quorum.
I understand.
So really appreciate you taking time to come and share with us what you might could offer today.
Sure. So originally, I presented to one of the other committees, I guess a couple of weeks ago.
Downtown development.
Yeah, downtown development, and had presented a PowerPoint. Tonight, I wasn't really prepared to come to give a full presentation. I was just going to try to answer any questions, but I'll give kind of a brief description of my company. So we are a private code enforcement company. We are hired to handle all the code enforcement needs, zoning enforcement, some planning stuff for municipalities throughout the state of North Carolina. Currently, we have about 10 contracts with municipalities throughout the state. Got numerous inspectors that work for me. My personal background is in law enforcement. I was a criminal investigator for most of my career. I got out of that and got into code enforcement. I'm the only one who has a law enforcement background as far as my employees. I've tried to identify employees that are more customer service centric than being enforcement centric, so I can teach the proper way to do the code enforcement, but sometimes you can't teach people how to interact with other people the way they need to. So that's what I look for in the employees. What we do is we take a kind of a more personable approach. We make ourselves available as much as possible, so it's not just sending or receiving a letter periodically, and that be it. We try to establish a relationship with the individual property owners, talk to them, be kind of relationship, establish a rapport, get on a first name basis with them if we can, just so we can, communicate and help them along with the process of abatement. A lot of times people will receive a letter or get put notification that they're in violation, and then they have no idea what to do. So we try to help that along. If we've got established resources in the area, put them in contact with other individuals who may be able to help them out. What we found is that a lot of people dealing with minimum housing or dealing with some of these other issues, if they had the finances to begin with to fix it, they wouldn't be in the problem that they're in. So we try to be as creative as we can to help the individuals abate it, stay motivated to abate it, and educate while we're doing that. That's a big part that we do, is to help educate the public on the ordinances, so it's not something that maintains an issue over and over and over. One of the things that we don't do, I guess, would be, our primary focus is not on the enforcement aspect of fining or penalizing anybody. Our focus is that of compliance. That's what our primary focus is to establish what the goals are for the town and implement those goals in our work in accordance with those goals to ensure that compliance is met with those properties. One of the big things that you find with code enforcement is you have a lot of people who don't really have accountability. If you don't do it in a certain amount of time, then they'll move forward with issuing a penalty or move forward with abating it and then charging you for it, and you don't have the money to pay for it in the first place. So what we try to do is encourage accountability for property owners so that we can make sure that they understand that, I may put a little work into it right now, but this is something that I've got to maintain and continue to maintain. And that's how, I think when we talked last time, of kind of working ourselves out of a job, so it's not a revolving door where we have to constantly stay on these people over and over and over and over, but we educate and ensure that accountability is held so that they can abate it and continue to move forward. We've had a lot of progress. We've worked in numerous towns with historic districts, not historic districts, minimum housing, commercial buildings, pretty much anything nuisance that you can think of. Some animal stuff, fire stuff. There's not really anything at this point that we're working on their towns that we haven't already seen before. So we're very familiar and comfortable. It's what we specialize in. This is what we do. And so I feel confident that we could come in. I came in a little earlier today and was able to drive around the town some and saw some of the issues that you guys are facing. It's definitely something that, there's some bigger issues there. There's also some low-hanging fruit. And the goal is to kind of work, I would think, on both projects so that the public and you all can see progress that's immediately being made. But while we're doing that, also work on those projects that may take some more time to do because a lot of the stuff hasn't appeared overnight. It's been stuff that has been sitting there for years and years and years, and it's now gotten to the state where you guys are like, well, we need to do something about it. The other big thing too is we hold everybody accountable the same way. That just doesn't mean the public, but it also means the town itself. In most of the towns that we deal with, they also have properties that, sometimes they're in violation. And one of the main things that happens is you see individuals who will say, well, how can you expect me to mow my grass or, fix my house up when you've got an overgrown lot or you've got a building that needs help? And the main thing that you have to do is you have to lead, my personal opinion is you have to lead by example and go ahead and address that and do what you need to do. And as long as everyone is working towards abatement, it's going to take as long as it's going to take to get there. But as long as you're actively working towards abatement, that's what the goal is. Right now, people aren't working towards abatement. So the goal is to get them working towards abatement. That's a kind of a brief synopsis of the more detail that I went over previously. If you have any questions, I'd love to address those.
I guess we can take questions from the public. So yes, ma'am, Ms. Bissett.
Emery, I don't know how many situations Spring Hope would have, but let's just say we have 20. Do you tackle all 20, or do you take maybe 5 at a time and work on them and then 5 more, or do you actually, how do you go about even the beginning of solving some of our problems?
So the first thing, a lot of times, and I think we touched on this before, a lot of times there's a list floating around of properties that you know of right now. There's more than that, but there's ones that people have complained about or it's been an ongoing issue for a long time. So you take that and you prioritize it. The main thing that's going to determine how many cases you're going to be dealing with at one time is going to be how many hours you're working. And that's going to determine how much time you can physically put into it. You want to stretch yourself so thin that you can't, make progress in the cases that you're working on. What we found is we tend to stagger. So let's say we have those 20 cases. We start this week, we may work on 5 of those cases. Go ahead, open them up, get the notifications sent out, work on getting a response back, knocking on the door, having a conversation with them. And then if we're caught up at that point with those 5 cases, the next week we'll do 5 more. The next week we'll do 5 more. So by the time we're a month down the road, we've done that initial first 30 days. It's ready to either the case is abated or ready to move forward to the next step. And then each week we're ready to move forward to the next step on that next set of 5 cases. So it's about prioritization and then just how you're handling the cases and then what's a bigger issue, a bigger concern. That's what we'll address first. And then we just kind of carry it on that way. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Brandon. So you're based out of Winston-Salem, correct?
That's where I'm based at. That's where my home office is. I've got inspectors that live in different areas that work.
Okay, so you would anticipate an inspector that lives near Spring Hook would work?
It would be close. The gentleman that I got that works in Lewisburg,
Uh,
it would be the one that I would probably put here as primary working here. So on those days, when he's up here anyway, he would be able to swing over and do that or vice versa.
So you have a contract with Lewisburg.
Yes.
Could you give us an example of an issue that the town of Lewisburg had that they couldn't get rectified, that you were able to
Sure.
help with that and get that into compliance, and kind of tell us about that as an example?
So some of the main issues that were facing Lewisburg are the amount of junk vehicles that they had on the property.
Mhm.
They've had a lot of properties, they've had a lot of vehicles. And there were, most of the time, what it resulted in with their previous code enforcement was issuing a tow notice and then issuing a criminal summons on the property owner. So it actually went to criminal court. What we were able to do going in, because of the process that we do, and more so than just, what typical code enforcement does, but more on what law enforcement does, trying to solve a case of actually having a conversation, knocking on the door, talking to you, putting a face to it, making ourselves available. We're able to get a lot of those vehicles that have been sitting there for years that they haven't been able to get moved, actually get gone. And Philip Slater, the planning director, has actually made comment to us about how he's amazed at some of the vehicles that we've had removed, that the property owners were the ones that had those removed. So that was a big issue that they were facing.
So in that case, you might put them in touch with the tow company to do the removal?
Well, there's more to it than just that. A lot of what we do is following up and continuing the conversation with him and continuing to follow up with him. What happens a lot of times when you have undedicated personnel is that they've got multiple jobs that they have to do, so they're not able to dedicate the time needed. Everybody thinks that code enforcement, you send a letter and then that's the end of it, or you make a phone call and that's the end of it. And in some cases it can be, but a lot of times most individuals will get that initial letter and then not even respond to it, not do anything. But then when you try to have a conversation with them, you knock on the door, you talk to them, you call them, you give them your cell phone, you're able to talk to them on a Saturday or a Sunday, you tend to be able to get things done more so than what you normally could do. So it's not just one specific thing that we do that helps get the stuff abated, but it's a combination of our entire style that we do that is what helps.
Brandon, I hate to put you on the spot, I have to, it wouldn't be me if I didn't. But you said you came in early and you rode around.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what you seen. In your opinion, tell me what you think.
Well, first off, there's a lot of cats. There's a lot of cats in the downtown area.
I'm working on that.
I get it. We wouldn't handle the cats, but that's the one
Yes,
thing.
does that.
Yeah,
One thing
I've been
I
working
did.
on that for almost 2 years.
One thing I did notice. So you've got quite a few empty or abandoned or old structures on the commercial side that seem like they would be great locations for something. But as of right now, there's a lot of trash around it or debris around it, and there's not a whole lot of upkeep going on with them. You've got quite a few minimum housing issues, some boarded up houses, even on the main strip of 64 cutting through. You've got some really nice historic houses. Then you've got some houses that look like, nobody cares about anything. It looks like somebody could be, kicking in and just not supposed to be living in there, but being in there. You've got a lot of junk. You've got a lot of people who have backyards and side yards full of auto parts, construction debris, household items, things like that. We're not in the season yet for grass to grow, but you can see some of the old stuff that has grown up, laid down, that's not been addressed. So it looks like most of your small town, North Carolina towns that haven't really taken any serious code enforcement action. So it's just buildup, and it's stuff that could, most of it probably be remedied relatively easy with dedicated time, but it's just a matter of doing that. But, nuisance and minimum housing, that's what we saw.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So So let's say, Brandon, in the case of a house that you may see in town that's definitely doesn't meet minimum housing standards, it's not up to code, what do you do in that case? You go and you find the owner, but maybe they say, well, we can't afford to fix this. We can't do anything. We don't have time. We live out of state. That's an air property. Or what are some things you can do to make sure that does walk back up to code in a situation like that?
Well, the main thing is
Above what, say, Jay could do.
well, we're not doing anything differently as far as the enforcement action, because ultimately we're enforcing your ordinance.
Right.
You know, the ordinance doesn't change from Jay to myself.
Right.
The difference is, you know, this is what we specialize in. We have experience doing what we're doing. I mean, it's the difference between being, I would think, you know, I don't know what you do for a living, but when you first started compared to how you are now, that, you know, that's a big difference in what you know, your quality of your work. So to quantify it with what we would do different, I don't know that I could give you an answer on that. But what we do different than normal code enforcement is we establish a much better rapport. That's our initial goal, is to establish a rapport with individuals and have a much more personal relationship with them than what you typically have in something like this, because we are dedicating the time into doing that, and we know if we do that, we're going to be able to make some progress, because we turn it into, it's no longer a us versus them kind of thing, but everybody working together towards that common goal of abatement. If you've got a willing property owner who has the means to be able to comply, then the main thing is finding the proper motivation to get them to do that. If you don't, then you exercise the ordinance as it's set out to ensure that you put the town in position to be able to take the appropriate action that they see fit as needed. Whether, you know, if it's something that is a house that's got, you know, partially collapsed roof, it's something beyond the point of being able to do a repair on, but it's safe enough to get a fire department to go inside of it, then you can work towards a controlled burn. You can also look at other historic groups that want to come in and may have funds available to do some restoration. You look, if it's an air property, and air properties are tricky because a lot of your nonprofit organizations don't like to work with heirs unless they're specifically identified and know exactly who they are. But I've worked with Habitat, with other nonprofit organizations, to where people would turn over those lots to those organizations to get out from under them, so they don't have to deal with it anymore. That company come in, or nonprofit come in, do a demo, build a new house, or do restoration on it, depending on what their funding is. So it's a case-by-case basis, but in most cases, we're going to get you to the point where either the property owner is able to do something, it goes to another property owner who's able to do something, or the town will be in a position to be able to do whatever they want to do to that structure. And that's how your ordinance is going to be written, but it's general statute.
I think kind of what Commissioner Griffith is asking is, and I know we asked this at the Downtown Development Board, you have access to resources that could possibly help people. Like
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I'll give you the same example I gave the other night. This was in Davie County, in Coolamy. We had a lady who lived in a house. Her husband passed away, and she did not have the resources to do the work that she needed to do on the house. Had a plumbing issue, couldn't get it fixed, ended up having to shut the water off. She had to move out. She was behind on taxes. There was some issues with the front porch, and then there was some major plumbing issues. Was able to track down a general contractor who yearly donated supplies, money, or whatever to individuals that were in need. It's just a matter of identifying them. Was able to identify them. They were able to give enough money to cover the back taxes on the house and to cover the the parts needed to make the repair. So it was a hot water heater and some other piping, and then some wood. And then I was able to make contact with a local church at a men's group who was able to come in and do that work for free for that individual. Once it was repaired, she was able to move back into that house and, still lives there. So that's an example of what you don't normally see in code enforcement. Because with us being in business, if we don't make progress, our contracts get canceled. So it's in our best interest for the individuals to abate their properties. We also, we want to ensure that we do the job that we say we're going to do. We don't want to say we're going to do this job and then come in and do nothing actually happen. So we're going to do everything that we can to assist these individuals. We're not going to come out of pocket and do anything. We're not going to do any of the work ourselves. They're going to have to take responsibility for it on their own. We don't have any companies that we get kickbacks from giving, introducing them. But it's no different than, oh, I hear you need something. Well, I know somebody who may be able to help you, and we put those two in contact that might not otherwise be able to come into contact. We also have the ability to track individuals. It's similar to like a skip tracing, but actually be able to locate individuals that you may not otherwise be able to locate. So it's not, hopping on Google or Facebook to track somebody down. This is something that is attached to your Social Security number, to TransUnion, to your credit report, and we can pull all the information that we need to. It's something that I had to go through background investigation, training for, and actually I had to have someone come into my house and do an inspection in my house before they would give me access to this database.
I know we've had issues tracking down heirs and stuff in the past, and that got really drawn out with that.
Yeah.
It seems like that would really help us.
Yeah, what it does is typically the process that we'll do is we'll try to track down everybody that we can up front through GIS, tax records, things like that. With the minimum housing, if it gets to the point where we're going to prepare an ordinance and then send it to the town attorney to review it before it gets presented to the board, at that point, they will usually do some type of, they'll look into all the records of it and see if they can identify any additional heirs to it. And if they are able to identify those, then we'll go ahead, pull the records on those and send new notices and hearings, notice of hearings for that, and final orders on that, just to ensure that everybody's been notified.
So you could also, we need to have our own house in order, and there's some things that we need to pay attention to as a town. You could also, maybe to begin with, work with the town to identify some things that we need to improve on. Might be able to find some resources to help us as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's applicable for everybody. I think the main difference is being an entity that has a budget based off of tax base versus being, a single mom with kids who's got a hole in her roof. Those are two different things. But I think you guys have already started on it well with your project, with the assessment that you had done, where I think you've identified 2 of your properties already that are on a list of things that need to be addressed. So, but I'm willing to, assess whatever needs to be assessed and see, what needs to be done and help out where I can. I know with the town of Carthage, we had 5 houses that we had demolished. They've been sitting there for quite a few years. They generated a lot of complaints. They were all absentee property owners. So as it turned out, the town took action to abate all those. And because of one of my contacts, I was able to get the best rate for asbestos inspections, abatement, and then also demolitions. Just because I've worked with them so much, they knew me and they were able to give the best rate for that. Can't say that would happen all the time, but that's just one of the things that I was able to do to help with the town itself.
And do you not have a termination clause? And I'm looking for a termination clause and I don't see a termination clause, so do you not offer?
For this one, with it being 15 weeks, I did not include anything in there. Typically, in my normal full fiscal year, it will have a clause in there that if there is documented unsatisfactory performance, there will be basically kind of a meeting or counseling with the town manager to discuss what those issues are. And if they persist, then the contract can be canceled with a 30-day notice. that's typically what my normal clause is on that. I'm sorry.
How many terminations have you had? prior?
Terminations during none. Yeah, we've had some where we've completed a good amount and we've not done a renewal of the contract. I've had one that I canceled myself, but we've not had any that were canceled mid-contract. Everything has been completed.
And the guy that you said you would probably use for us has done the work in Lewisburg.
Oh yes, he's pretty much my right hand. He's got about 6 years of code enforcement experience, and he's right now I have him actively working in Lewisburg, Green Level, and East Spencer, North Carolina.
He's from where?
He's over in Randleman, so kind of between Asheboro and Greensboro.
That's right.
So he's familiar with, because all those towns are small towns.
Oh yes, yeah. I
Very
mean,
knowledgeable.
we specialize in towns this size. Like because these are kind of the common issues that you see with it, and your larger companies that get hired by big towns don't really bother themselves with some of the smaller stuff. And I personally like dealing with the smaller town versus I like dealing with the individuals versus it just being kind of a number back and forth or something like that.
So you mentioned Carthage, Lewisburg, or you at liberty to maybe say any other towns you work with that we might be familiar with?
Yeah, so Liberty,
Okay.
Sedalia, Jonesville, Mount Gilead, I said East Spencer, I think I've told you all of them at this point.
Okay.
I'm from Reedsville, so I know all them towns.
Yeah, we've worked as far away southwise as Hamlet, done a big project for Hamlet, and Lewisburg is as far east as we've come at this point. And then we've got several that we've previously worked for that we've done projects or just we've not renewed the contracts. A lot of, budget plays a huge role in it. It also, having an election can change a huge role as to what the town's desire is and what they want to do. So we've been steady in business since 2015. Started with one contract and it's increased since then. This fiscal year or this budget season, I've got about 4 towns that I'm talking to that are going to be putting contracts to vote within the next month to bring on either starting immediately or starting new fiscal year.
How many, I don't know, I may ask this in the meeting. How many towns have you worked with that had kind of what you see here, low-hanging fruit, whatever, that you came in and spent a year, 2, whatever, that they basically were able to take it back in-house because it kind of got under control?
So the town of Spencer, we were there for a year and a half. They brought me on board initially in April of 2019. They had their town manager, their land management director, and some other personnel finance officer all leave. There were some issues there. I think there were some court proceedings after because of it. But they brought me on board initially, just myself, to be their interim land management director, to be over their code enforcement planning and stuff. While I was there, they had hired an interim town manager. He had retired from Salisbury and had worked at Mooresville for quite a number of years. So he came in there and he had asked me to do an assessment of their code enforcement. At that time they had 2 part-time personnel working. One of the part-time personnel was a staffer from a staffing company who had no experience, really, the first 2 weeks she was there, she was out more than half the time, so they let her go. So it reduced to 1 individual. When we started looking at the work that they were doing, the interactions with the individuals, the progress that they needed to be making and reporting, he resigned. So at that point, we were approached to go ahead and provide full-time service for the town for the next fiscal year. So we did that, worked 40 hours a week. In that year, we abated over 1,000 cases. Working, now granted, that's working 40 hours a week. But it's a very similar town to this as far as size. Train tracks running right through the middle of it. You've got a historic district. You've got some, higher income houses. You have some lower income houses, and you've got a very diverse population. So we did that and was able to address all the issues that they had sitting there, houses that had been sitting there for 9, 10, 15, 20 years. We were able to locate property owners, which most of the time were banks, that had the means, had the capabilities to fix it, but nobody knew how to actually track them down or work it. We were able to locate them. We were able to deal with a lot of nuisance issues that they had going on. Wrote a little bit of new ordinance for them to help with some update stuff. And we ended up, they asked us to stay on past the new, go into the new fiscal year to allow them time to hire a part-time or assistant manager who was going to become the new manager, and then allow them to hire an in-house code enforcement personnel to be able to maintain what we were able to get the town to. And so we did that transition, and as it turns out, the interim town manager that left that town went to a new town and called me and had a meeting last week to come help them with the new town that they're in. So they're going to vote on that on the 16th. So I guess we made a good impression with him with what we did. So, but it's a very similar situation. We went into it, there's some towns that go into where their goal is to hire us and then just maintain us and keep us because they don't have any interest, whether it's because of the size of the town, the community, or whatever. They wanted us to stay. There's others that we go into where we know we're going to be there. The goal is to be there, a year or two to get whatever we can under control, accomplish as much as we can, and then put a nice pretty bow on it to hand off to, whoever's going to be coming in next to do that. So that's, something that we're familiar with doing.
Jay, I got a question for you. So when are we looking to officially start? If it's voted on, when are we looking to officially start the contract?
Is it a kind of a lag with maybe a week or two in between the final vote, or is it something that gets probably started in the next? I know that for this one that was originally proposed, if it had been voted on tonight, it was going to start on the 22nd. Let's just say we throw it out there that if we meet at the next town board meeting, if that's the case, that would be April 1st. When do you think that we can?
We start immediately. I mean, it's when we're looking, and keep in mind too, with this contract, it's different because I know Jay, asked me to do whatever I could, to help. And I know usually if we're able to get our foot in the door, you're able to see what we can do, and then it would turn into kind of a full fiscal year contract most of the time. So the rate that we're at is dramatically lower than what our normal rate is. It comes out to working ideally, I think in this I wrote up, working a full day and capping at that $3,000 for that time frame. So it comes out to about $25 an hour. That is something that we could implement pretty much right away. If I didn't have the personnel that had the free time, then I could just come do it myself. But I've been talking with my inspector, and I've got one inspector who can pick up some additional hours, so I can move him from one of the other towns to where he could transition over here, since he's already used to working in this area. So it's just a matter of telling him to come here instead of going somewhere else.
And the other example is that it's been written in here for a 2-week period, so even if we, and again, it was originally intended for potentially been voted on tonight, but let's just say that it's voted on April 1st meeting, we could still keep it at the 15-week period, and it will still just roll over into the next fiscal year and just keep it still
Correct.
pretty much the same as this as well.
All right, so I have another question, but this question's for you, Mark. So, because we had some of the town leadership. I mean, I'm not a tongue bagger, so I just pretty much just cut to the chase. Since we had some town leadership who decided they didn't want to show up, what's the next step as far as getting this? Because, I mean, we need to get this taken care of. The community, they're here. They want this. So the ones who's in agreement to vote on this, to do the trial for the 15 weeks, what do we need to do?
Well, you have to have 4 people here, and if that's the next town meeting, that would work. But you gotta have, I mean, but whether it's April, I think it's the 5th, April 5th, whether it's April 5th or any other meeting, whether it's a special call meeting, you gotta have 4 people here before you can take a vote. And then once you take the vote, you gotta have three council members to vote in favor for it to pass.
And going into the next fiscal year, how is that going to affect us? Because if we do April, it goes into to our next fiscal reporting time, you said, right?
It's fine because we just have to commit the funds to pay into the full 15-week period. Just like a multi-year contract, you know, the town has multi-year contracts with Environment. It goes over into multiple fiscal years. You would just have to commit and make sure that you have the line item budgeted for that to pay for it into the new fiscal year.
So you could carry any money we had earmarked for this over into the next.
Well, it wouldn't be necessarily earmarked. We would spend what we have in this fiscal year budget, but whatever portion of the 15 weeks that's over into the new fiscal year, I would have to make sure that there's enough funds to cover that line item the next fiscal year when the town board votes on that in June.
Which is the case for multiple things.
Yeah. I got a personal question.
Yes, sir.
Did you drive all the way from Winston-Salem tonight?
I did. I did last time too.
Are you right in town in Winston-Salem?
I'm right on the outskirts. I'm actually, I'm in Davidson County, so I'm
Okay.
right on the outskirts.
Mhm.
So I'm a little bit, I guess, past. I'm a little bit south of Winston-Salem.
Took you over 3 hours to get you.
Going home, depending on what time we leave, I'll probably be home around 10, a little after 10 or so. So it's a little over 2 hours to get there.
I apologize that because I drive to Reedsville quite often, which is right next door
Right.
to Winston, and it takes me 3 hours, so.
Well, you know, it's one of those things, it just on a personal note, it is disappointing when you come out here and you don't, you know, you have a forum to communicate and to talk. You know, my goal for my company is to not come in and be this, you know, militant group to, you know, strong arm people into paying money. Code enforcement should not be and is not a money maker. If that's your goal in code enforcement, you're going about it all wrong. The goal is compliance. The goal is the community working together and everybody taking pride in the community. You didn't used to have these problems because people took more pride in the properties. But that has fallen to the wayside. And a lot of that has to do with rental properties. A lot of that has to do with those generations have passed away. And unfortunately, it wasn't passed down to the younger generations. And so, you know, it's the same reason why you have law enforcement, you have firemen, you have insurance. You have individuals who specialize in dealing with certain situations, and that's what we specialize in. You know, I expect to be held to the fire because I make big promises and I say we're going to do these things. But at the same time, nothing that I'm trying to do should create any conflict in anything that we're doing, because the goal here is to the betterment of the community itself. You know, everybody may have differing opinions on what they're doing, but you know, I wouldn't think if somebody was going to drive 2 hours to come talk to me, you know, I'll be honest with you, I watched the video from the commissioners meeting previously. I was expecting a lot of questions from the mayor, because he said in open meeting he was going to have a lot of questions for me, and he chose to not show up tonight. So that's disappointing that we drive this far to do that, but I think the community sees, you know, at least you all, you know, do genuinely care about what's going on and what the direction is. And I do too. And this is my business and reputation is everything. So, you know, it is what it is, but we're here to do what we can do to help out this town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else? I'm sorry.
Chamber President, you got any comments or questions from any of the members of the chamber? Or
I think
you know, you've seen this presentation, but I didn't know if you had any
Sure,
Is any questions here with you?
I think Prudence actually took the one right out of my mouth was, what do you see? And you answered that admirably. I know there's a lot of concern, and it's a touchy subject for some. But like I spoke in open forum at last meeting, that there are individuals watching from outside the fence, so to speak, and they're looking towards the leadership of the town to step forward and to make these corrective actions in town. So I would hope that in April we'll see a full bench and this action can go to a vote.
And I'd like to just say that this recommendation from the advisory, from the Downtown Development Commission was unanimous. There was no dissenting opinion from that board whatsoever. From the minute that we heard it, we were excited.
I will have to agree.
We do have a mix. We have their chamber, but also Al and Betsy serve on the Downtown Development Board.
Dual boards.
Well, we were fortunate that the mayor and Ms. Lucas were present for that last presentation, so they did see it.
Yeah.
But we ain't fortunate tonight.
No, we are not. And I apologize
Thank you.
for you coming out. I appreciate all that you are trying to do for our town.
We got one more question over here.
No, I just have one comment. If I can get it together. This is so disappointing to me. I have looked around and I'm the oldest one in here. But I bet there's not a soul in here that loves Spring Hope any more than I do. And we need help. Who cannot see that our town needs code enforcement? I think Jay's been here, 4 or 5 years? I heard the mayor say the other night, I think he's been the mayor 19 years. Did I hear him say 19 years? What has happened to Spring Hope has not happened in the last 4 years. This started a long time ago. Now, I will be the first to say, I've got some neighbors that moved in last July, and they need help. They truly need help. So yes, we've got some that has just created this backyard full of what you're talking about, the junk cars that got drug in. What I thought I was coming to tonight was we were going to hear this young man speak one more time, who impressed me the first time I heard him. I was ready for him to start to work the very next day. And I sit here and I keep thinking about those empty seats. And I'm like, okay, I voted for them. I voted for them to look after my best interest. So I don't have to get involved in politics. I don't have to go to these meetings. I voted for them to look after my best interest, but I don't see it happening. And I guess I'm just kind of crushed that this is in Spring Hope. This is in this little town of Spring Hope that this happens. And I don't understand it. It really truly hurts my feelings that we don't get along any better than this, that we can't work it out any better than this. And I don't know what to say other than I still like this gentleman. And I still want him to help us. And once he gets us cleaned up, then I want to be able to look at Jay and say, Jay, you don't let it get back like it was. It is your job to keep it clean. This gentleman is going to clean it for you, and then you keep it clean. What is wrong with us having a conversation like this? What has happened to us? Can y'all tell me? Well, I mean, I don't come to the town board meetings. Are you getting all this down, sir? I don't come to the town board meetings. So So I truly do not know how all of this works. I don't want to know, do I run for the board? I just expect y'all to take care of me,
Yes, ma'am.
and it's not happening. So can somebody explain to me what is going on? Because I'm truly lost. I mean, I just don't understand it.
I'm not sure.
You know, I don't think any of us here can answer that, but I think that all of us here, much like yourself, want things to improve. And I think our hope in doing this early was to go ahead and get started on it and not have to wait another month. I think that's what we all wanted, which is why we are here tonight. And I would appreciate you being here and your comments.
Ms. Busy, you may be the oldest one here, but for me, you're one of the best examples of what the citizens of Spring Oak should be like. And it makes me feel good to see somebody young. I call you young, Ethan. He's in it, the president of the chamber, and he's come in and that new dedication for another generation. You know, Brandon mentioned this a lot of times is passed, and the old generation, the older, they kind of pass it on, and it turns into something else. So, you know, I'm by no means one of the young ones, but I was a young one for a long time, and I know what Spring Oak was like. I saw it in its heyday. I feel unfortunate for my children because they don't know what Spring Oak used to be like. I mean, I can remember carving pumpkins on the platform at Depot and seeing thousands and thousands of people at a pumpkin festival. I can remember going with my grandmother to the shops on Main Street and seeing all the ladies from Raleigh because they had to go buy a dress for Miss Ellen.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, I remember this. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not going to, I profit nothing personally from improving this town. Nothing.
And I don't either, other than I love
Right.
to see us clean and you know, inviting the people that do
Yes.
come in.
I want us to be, once again, that proud community that Spring Oak once was, that people talk about, oh, that's a cute little town, I know that town. I mean, that's what we want. And so we appreciate you being here at the chamber and everything everybody's doing.
I will say for me, because I'm the newest one, and I have a word just to say, I'm the newest one on the board, and it's very upsetting to me for you to be upset. You know I'm close to you, and it's upsetting for me as one of the leaders in this town because we have failed this community. We have failed. Now, when I listen to, my husband grew up in this town, and when I listen to my husband talk about how this town used to be, when I listen to Brent talk about how this town used to be, Alan, I've even had conversations with you on how this town used to be, had conversations with you. I feel like I missed out. I feel like I truly, I'm like, okay, well, where's all this in now? Because I feel like I've missed out. But I really feel like it's, as leaders in this town, it should be about the community and not about power pulling or whatever people want to call it. So it is upsetting for me to have you upset because we didn't do what we needed to do tonight. And for you to drive all the way from Winston, because I hate that drive myself. I can't stand to have, and I do it in a Hummer, so I can't stand to have to do that drive. And for you to drive all the way here 2 times and leaving when it's dark, because you gotta go on some dark roads, and deer love us on them dark roads. But it is just appalling for me that we are sitting here and we still can't tell you whether we're gonna sign a contract or not. So we have failed this town. We have, as a leadership, the 3 of us, we came. We got off work. All of us worked today. Some of us worked a little overtime. But we made, I came from training somebody, but we still came because we had a commitment to this community and to this town. I can't speak for what
Those that are missing.
the one them, can't speak for them, not gonna attempt to speak for them. Mom always told me if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing nice, just don't talk. So I'd rather just leave that alone. But I will say that out of us three,
I do agree, and I appreciate all three of you. And really, I sat here and I'm thinking, who I have voted for, when you ran for the board, who I voted for. And the mayor, who I voted for the mayor. And it really is kind of heartbreaking because if this gentleman is not hired, then we have wasted so many people. Look at the Downtown Development Committee that has worked on this. And why do we even have them if we're not going to take their advice at the research they've done? Why do we even have that committee if we don't listen to what they've got to say? I don't understand any of this, and I would love for one of the absentee people to explain it to me because I really do want to understand. And right now, I don't understand.
then you have that right. You have that right for them to explain it to you. As folks that you voted for.
That's right. Okay, thank you. Thank y'all.
I have a comment. I'm sure if you were driving around Spring Hope, you noticed the half collapsed building.
Mm-hmm.
My business was beside it and the wall collapsed on my building. I moved here almost 3 years ago, opened my business here. Have been hit the road. As soon as I came into this town, I joined the chamber, joined the downtown advisory board, and I heard you talked about the cats. I started the feral cat program here in town. Even though you see a lot of these cats, last year I trapped and spayed and relocated 68 cats in this town. So can you imagine how many cats there would have been? Anyway, I will apologize. I'm embarrassed by our town. I do not live in town. I live in Bunn. I live in Franklin County. I have had a business here. Hope to one day have a business back in this town. And I'm truly embarrassed. So I would like to apologize for what happened here tonight. But I have probably more heart into this right here than anybody. Because I feel if you were sitting here a year ago and we had this underway, I wouldn't be out of business right now because that wall may have not have failed. And I also have a heart into it because if it wasn't for the fact that failed at 6:30 in the morning and not at 8:30 in the morning, I may not be sitting here right now because I would have been standing in that building where that wall failed and me or one of my employees could have been killed or seriously hurt. So I feel out of anybody here, more reason to be here and to fight for this code enforcement to get in place now because there's a lot more buildings that are crumbling in this town and somebody might not be as lucky as I was on the next wall that falls. That's all I have to say. Thank y'all.
Brandon, appreciate you coming tonight. Appreciate all the members of the public press that came, Florida Town Manager. Don't know if we have anything else to cover. I hope, Brandon, that you'd be willing to come back one more time when hopefully we can have a quorum and get this taken care of. Unless there's any other business or any other comments, I'd say we'd be dismissed and we'd like to see all of you back first Monday night in April. If not, before.